Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. As you can probably tell by my voice, which is now bunged up as well, I'm still feeling a bit ropey. I thought Dr. Tottenham was supposed to help. Dr. Tottenham helped Wolves, didn't help me. If anything, I think Tottenham Hotspur is making me sicker. Has there been any cases where you can sue a football club for making you feel unwell? I think that's pretty much what's happening right now. Um, as you're probably aware, wasn't feeling great in that last video. Did that with a temperature, which only got worse the next day. I had to miss the pre-match press conference. Then suddenly, randomly on the match day, I actually felt fine, no temperature whatsoever. Bit of a Barry White voice still going on, but I thought, hey, okay, let's go to Wolverhampton. Went to Wolverhampton. Spurs did me absolutely no favours. One of those where you head all the way up there and you just think, why did I bother? As I'm sure all of the fans that travelled there felt exactly the same. And then afterwards, I had the most awkward post-match press conference where I really was just hoping to sit there, not really say anything, just stay in the corner, just do my stuff, because my voice obviously sounded even worse than this yesterday. Now it just sounds bunged up. Yesterday it was properly like, hello. So yeah, just happy to sit there. And then nobody asked any questions. Or weren't going to. So I thought, right, okay, I don't want to repeat of that Mourinho at Man U moment when he walked out into the press conference room, no one asked a question, so he walked straight back out again. So I asked a couple, and I thought I'd do that classic thing where you stop and just let other people have a bit of a go. And it was like nobody was going to. So I went to kind of ask a third question, and fortunately someone else asked one. Then it was like, oh no, it's gone silent again, so I had to ask some more. And Stellini's probably looking at me just thinking, who is this weird guy putting on a fake voice in the front row? Yeah, I don't know. I haven't listened back to it, but presumably you must be able to hear me kind of talking like that. Very, very weird. Yeah, and then the trek home to do the writing, and then today, not so great, not so great. But there you go. Hopefully, fit and ready back in time for all the Champions League fun and games. But this isn't a video about how I'm feeling, although the first 2 minutes have suggested that. Just explaining pretty much in case there's any moments where I need to take a drink or when I need to maybe even blow my nose. Who knows what delights may lie ahead for you in this video. But we need to talk about this match. It was so weird because it had so many things that were missing from the Sheffield United game were there, but just not the quality. And that was the most glaring thing. I'll give this stat for you, which for me summed up the entire match. So, when Raul Jimenez headed, you remember that header that Forster flew across and saved in the second half? That was Wolves' first shot on goal. By that point, Tottenham had had 14 shots at the Wolves goal. And just says everything about the game that Spurs did put in the effort. They did. The first half especially, it was lots of good stuff. There was pressing, harassing, playing high up the pitch, trying to progressively move the ball forward. But absolutely no quality up front. You had three of forwards who tore the Premier League apart last season in Son Heung-min, Harry Kane and Dejan Kulusevski. Could they do anything against a side struggling in the Premier League? No. And now we're at the stage where 2 games in a week, not a single goal scored. Just absolutely mad. And do you know what was weird was that, I don't know if I said this at the end of the last video. The last video was an absolute haze. I cannot remember what I said and what I didn't say. But previous Wolves games, in my head, my perception has always been that they've been incredibly difficult, tight, narrow matches. Tight matches with narrow scorelines. And Spurs, often outnumbered in the midfield, struggled for possession. But ultimately, the stats showed that before yesterday's game, they had only lost 3 out of the last 14 meetings between the two sides. So, yeah, they somehow found a way to often get the job done, despite the fact that they were kind of often, possession-heavy games towards Wolves. Yet yesterday was the opposite. I actually felt Spurs did really well with the ball. I'd say we're talking first half and then periods of the second half. But again, it's just the quality missing. Sorry, I've got the Liverpool Man U matches on just above my eye line, and Liverpool have just scored. So sorry, you've had this before when I've been doing one of these and there's a video, a match going on in the background, so you get this random half commentary on a game that you, by the time this comes out, you know full well what happened, and you were probably watching it anyway. But it helps you kind of, I guess, know exactly when I'm recording these, if you need to know that. But yeah, so here's some stats for you. In that first half, they had 11 touches, Spurs, in the Wolves box, without Wolves having had a single one in theirs. And they made 62 passes in the final third to the home side's 28. And this is what Julian Lopetegui said afterwards. We're happy for the 3 points, but to be honest, the match had two very clear halves. In the first half, they played with fantastic rhythm and they deserved more. In the second half, we improved a lot and we showed our face in the end. I'm happy, but I have to recognise that Tottenham had chances. So in all, Spurs had 21 shots on the Wolves goal. Hit the crossbar twice, of course. Those efforts, Pedro Porro's free kick and Sonny's one that deflected up onto the bar. They also had 6 of those 21 shots were on target, including Dejan Kulusevski cutting inside, really nice kind of trademark curling shot that Jose Sarr pushed aside. Even Perisic coming in at the back post, trying to head Sonny's really nice free kick, actually, which the Sarr pushed away. I just couldn't find a way through. Porro also had another shot that was deflected up onto the roof of the net. I have another stat here. Spurs had more possession, better pass success rate, 86% to 81. They won 11 aerial battles to Wolves' 8. However, when you look at some of the other key stats, it kind of shows why they didn't get through. Wolves made 17 tackles to Tottenham's 5. And Spurs were wasteful in the fact that they were dispossessed 12 times to Wolves' 1. Wolves only managed 8 shots on goal, 5 on target. But of course, crucially, it doesn't matter because one of those shots on target was the goal. I felt sorry for Fraser Forster, to be honest. He actually made some really good saves. It was weird. It was a game where Spurs dominated most of the chances, yet Forster had to make some really good saves. Excuse me. And yes, of course, maybe for the goal, he could have done better in terms of, I think he saw it quite late and he pushed it forwards when, of his course, goalkeepers always attempt to push it out wide. But there was other issues going on in the centre of that penalty area that we're going to talk about. 82 minutes. Can't believe that. He did. That's right. He made other saves. Jimenez, he saved a couple of times from. Ruben Neves, he saved a couple of times from as well. Excuse me. I feel sorry for Fraser Forster. He was one of those who didn't deserve to come away from the match with without at least a point. And it had to be Adama Traore, didn't it? The man who haunts my dreams. In all his oiled up glory. Honestly, you just knew it was going to be Adama Traore. As soon as he came off the bench at half time, it was a really nice finish. Guided it straight back into the corner. Whether he should have been unmarked to do that is another thing. But, yeah, in off the crossbar. His second Premier League goal of the season. His first goal of the season was 5 months ago. So no, I'm not having it. I know some people in the aftermath will, we should have bought him. See? What? Who said he hasn't got the end product? He doesn't really. It's just unfortunate that his biannual goal at the moment came against Tottenham. It had to be though. It's just, honestly, it was written. It wasn't even written in the stars. It was just written in the script of the game. It was just always going to happen. As soon as I saw him coming on at half time, I was just like, yeah, he's going to cause Spurs all kinds of problems. So Stellini told me afterwards, after one of my questions, which my voice is actually now approaching. And goodness knows what this voice is going to sound like by the end of this video. He told me that Spurs have to be nastier in front of goal. He said, I think the performance was good, particularly in the first half when we controlled the game in every aspect. We had some chances to score. We were not so nasty in the way to score. When you have a chance like this, you have to kill the game. The game was under control, but then in the second half, we struggled a bit at the start. But after 10 minutes, we adapted to the situation and we controlled the game. We had another chance with Sonny that hit the bar. After that, I think they had some intensity in the game, winning some offensive duels, and that created a situation where we struggled a bit and the game changed. But they found a way to score and we didn't. This is the history of the game. Unfortunately, there's kind of a history of Tottenham in recent years. Just this profligacy? Profligacy, I think I got it right. This ability to not take chances, then get punished. It just feels like the Tottenham way. And the other big thing I felt was the changes, or were the changes. I kind of, in all my feeling ropey glory, or lack of glory, I had to ask Stellini about it afterwards, because, I mean, you looked at it, and Lopetegui, obviously known as a tactical coach, and you could see he was constantly adjusting and tweaking his side. He could see the first half hadn't worked. I mean, he was forced into his first sub when Diego Costa went off with, it was a strange one. He kind of leapt up for an aerial challenge with Oliver Skip. I don't think they even touched each other. He just came down quite awkwardly on his knee. So he went off. And do you know what? I think, I'm not meaning to be disrespectful to Diego Costa whatsoever, but I felt like that was almost the best thing that happened to Wolves in that first half, because he hadn't been playing particularly well. He didn't look particularly mobile. He wasn't causing Spurs any problems. And Raul Jimenez came on. I really like Raul Jimenez. I think he should score more goals, but I think the way he plays, he always gives teams problems, and he did. He changed that attack. He held the ball up much better, and suddenly Wolves became much more dangerous. I felt when he, not straight away when he came on, but as he got into the game, and especially obviously that second half. Excuse me. He had the header. Oh, it's going to sound awful, me coughing. I'm sorry. But it was a choice of kind of not doing a video, not talking about the game, or talking about one with a bit of Barry White voice, and the odd coughing and snotting sounds. You may well have said, or be thinking, we're fine. Don't worry, we're fine without the video. You're right. But yeah, Lopetegui, wasn't only that though. He made two changes at the break. Switched from a back four to a back three to kind of match up with Spurs. And he used all 5 of his substitutions 10 minutes before Spurs made their first one. Spurs didn't make their first sub until 13 minutes from the end of the game. It just seems to be a Spurs thing. Other than Mourinho was very proactive with subs. Spurs just always have had a very kind of set way of managers and substitutions. We always know, and Conte kind of keeps to this, that you're going to get one maybe around the hour mark, and you might get another couple towards the end of the game, depending on how things are going. You would think, does this current, or this setup, which is obviously now coming to an end, where Conte will send a message from Turin or speak over the phone and ask for a change to be made, or the flip side is where Stellini and Mason want to make a change and they have to check with Conte. It's not the quickest process in the entire world, but it's not like Conte was like the quickest, most adaptive substitution maker ever anyway. That's not really what I'd say his coaching is about. I think, look, there are some managers out there you can see they will put out a starting 11, but throughout the game they're constantly changing it, tweaking it, making kind of decisions to counter what the opposition are doing or try and trouble them. But then there's other managers who believe, well, I'm picking my starting 11 and tactics because of my philosophy and the way I want to play, and I want to imprint them on the opposition, not be worried and fear about them the whole time. And I think it's quite clear Conte is one of those managers, and he'll believe that his system works when his players properly adhere to it, regardless of what the opposition are doing. Obviously, he does make the odd tactical tweak. I've seen him do that. I've seen little kind of... he often does it within his system, though, rather than bringing new players on. So, I think a good example was the recent seen Emerson Royale moving inside to help out and give an extra body into the midfield three. Little things like that, where players are given an extra little additional job on top of what they do. But he's less likely to kind of change things around and change systems and things like that. Excuse me. And he will point to his CV and he will say, the trophies are there because of the way my system has worked. So do I, is it frustrating? Of course. And that's why kind of after the game, having seen the way that Lopetegui had changed the game and had grabbed back control of it, and you could see just little moments were starting to get the Molineux crowd up and going again, and it just made a difference. There was a bit of a snowball effect, and they got the winning goal in the end. And whereas with Spurs substitutions, that on the whole they're often like for like, rather than a system changing thing. And if they are system changing, it's normally late in games if they're losing. So he'll throw on another attacking body, and an attacker will end up going to play as a wing back. Or actually, we did get a back four in the final stages yesterday. So I asked Delidi. I said, Wolves obviously looked fresher and fresher in that second half because they were constantly adding new players into the mix, whereas Spurs did seem to kind of lose a lot of their momentum in that second half. And unsurprisingly, he didn't agree. And I asked, had there been any temptation to make earlier changes to match up with them? He said, no. The team needed only 5 minutes to adapt. We were playing well and the pace, and we controlled the game. There wasn't a reason to change. Afterwards, we changed because there was a reason to change, because we needed more energy and to interrupt their pace in the game. But only one detail changed the story of the game. You could argue that Spurs made their change, I think 2 changes, and within a couple of minutes, Wolves had scored. So I think their changes actually had the desired effect at all. But it was a difficult game to kind of analyse because, of course, afterwards there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of people very unhappy because it's it's a back-to-back defeat. Sorry, I'm going to, just in case I don't want there to be an incident where there's anything dripping out of my nose while I'm doing this video. That would not look good. So I'd rather you just see a big old wad of tissue or toilet paper, technically. Sorry, it's so unprofessional. I don't even know where I was. Yes, sorry, the match itself. I know it's frustrating because it's back-to-back defeats, and it seems to be a thing this season that last season it was win-loss, 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 whereas this season seems to be a little bit more win-win, lose-lose, win-win, lose-lose. I don't know if that's actually true or whether I've just made that up in my head, but it just obviously feels like it is right now. Certainly has been in the last 10 days or so. Obviously 2 derby wins, which felt good, and now 2 defeats without a single goal scored, and both one against a championship team that had made 8 changes because of an illness in camp. Maybe this is where I've got it. And than a game against a Wolves side that have struggled. You know, some of the Wolves reporters I was talking to before the game were very much like, you know, this isn't going to be good for us. We really haven't been great, and but they ended up with the stadium rocking and the 3 points. So yeah, it's one, I think, if they take a lot of the stuff they did in the first half into the game against Milan, especially in front of a home crowd, I think they could do quite well. And I mean, they just need something to break for them to get the ball into that net. But it's about game management over the entire 90 plus minutes as well. And of course, losing also made the decision to leave some people out of the, obviously Harry Kane, out of the Sheffield United lineup completely redundant, because they then went on and lost the next game anyway. So you ended up going out of the FA Cup and losing the next game anyway. So yeah, didn't work. So talking about that kind of lack of ability to score right now, after, you know, netting 4 goals in 2 games in the derby, I was looking at some of the stats. So they've gone from scoring plenty of goals. They scored 11 more in the Premier League after the Chelsea game. Yeah, after the Chelsea game, I think I said this maybe in the last video, they'd scored 11 more compared to the same stage last season. But now, I'd say mainly in 2023, really, they've been struggling. Because if you take out the 4-0 win at Palace, which was a bit of an unexpected one, take out that one game, and Spurs have scored just 9 goals in 9 Premier League games and conceded 13. And then if you take all competitions, they've scored 13 goals in 13 matches and conceded 15. Excuse me. So yeah, it's there's definitely been a massive slow up in the creativity as well as the end product. Obviously, losing Sonny's goals has been a part of the problem. Someone that's so important with Tottenham. Obviously, we know he's scored just 5 times in 24 Premier League games this season. And obviously those games have come in just 3. So those goals have just come in 3 games. Oh, there's going to be a lot of messed up words, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the 5 goals have come in just 3 games. Whereas I looked up, and last season, after 24 league matches, Sonny had scored 11 goals, and quite tellingly, every single one of those goals had come in a different game. So he'd scored across 11 different matches as well. And then obviously, second half of the season, we know what happened then. He absolutely was on fire. Scored 12 goals in the final 11 matches on his way to the Golden Boot. Honestly, how everyone could do with Sonny just kind of reigniting for the second half of the season. And do you know what? I didn't think he was that bad. He was getting a bit of flack after the game, but I actually felt that there was a lot of what he did showed real glimpses of the old Sonny. There was lots of positive movement. I didn't think it was as bad a performance as some might kind of have you believe. He made 3 key passes. There was that, like I say, that terrific free kick to Perisic, which was a really nice one as well. Some really good attacking movement. I felt he was getting all around the pitch. 4 shots, 2 on target. You'll always hear me say about Sonny that I feel like when he instinctively just hits the ball early, that's when he's at his best. When he overthinks it, takes too long, that's sometimes when he doesn't produce his best moments as an attacker. And sometimes you'll just see him just take that extra little touch or delay things. Yeah, it is. It's just overthinking it. That's the main word, really. I mean, obviously his luck's a part of it as well. I did feel that with the one that hit the bar. Had that not got that tiny little nick off the defender's leg, perhaps that just flies straight into the net and we're not even talking about defeat. Maybe that turns things in the right direction for Spurs. But there was one moment, look, it was flagged offside, so ultimately it didn't matter. But for me, it just kind of... it just showed exactly where Sonny's confidence is right now in front of goal. And I think, who was it? someone put him through. I think it might have been a quick free kick from Kane. I can't remember who took the free kick. But Sonny ran through. He was offside. I think we knew that, but he wasn't aware of that, and neither was the defence or goalkeeper, because they all ran back. So he sprints through a goal, completely clear, but rather than taking the shot early himself 1v1, he held the ball up, cut back inside to try and go past a couple of players, and then he blazed the ball over the bar. So look, the flag went up, so it didn't really matter in the end anyway. But I just thought it was quite a moment that summed up where his head's at the moment, and how he's just not he's just not confident. And it is understandable. It does happen to players. Players go through these almost like droughts, don't they? I mean, Son's sometimes called a streaky player, but I don't always agree with that. I think I remember saying last year about times when I'd look back and you looked at his goals and assists, and actually he really, although it didn't feel sometimes like he was playing at his best, he was contributing across a large cross-section of games. But yeah, he's just having a nightmare of a season, really. Despite the fact that he's still got a fair few goals. Like, I can't remember how many he's got now. Let me see if I can get him up here while I'm talking. But he's one of those where, if that's a bad season, most people would be delighted. Yeah, 9 goals and 3 assists, which Liverpool have just scored again. Most people would be delighted with. This is not really good news for Spurs, is it? Liverpool scoring again means they're closing in, while Spurs need to find their form again. No, sorry. I think he'll end up just coming good. I think something will happen. I know there's a big thing about Perisic and whether he's good for him or not, and there's definitely, how do I put this? There's definitely some aspects where they haven't gelled together as well. Yes, there's a case to be had about whether they occupy the same positions, all of that. I get all of that. I'm not dismissing them, but what I would say is that there's been times when Son's been through with chances and he just hasn't scored the chances, and that's not really the responsibility of anyone else. Look, again, he's admitted it himself, so it's a bit of a moot point, I guess, me arguing either way. But yeah, I wouldn't say he's had the perfect conditions this season to replicate what he did last season. But I don't know. I still feel like Sonny's going to have a big part to play in the second half of this season. I just feel it's going to click for him again. Maybe I'm hoping, but I've just got a feeling that I think it will. So that was Sonny. Kulusevski as well. Like I say, it's definitely not just Sonny at all. Kulusevski has had a big old drop off. Obviously, with him, you could argue he's only 22, so it's a consistency thing with him. Young players, they're often going to be, they're going to lack consistency. That's just the way it works for young players. You can't kind of expect the same output from most of them unless they are just the most incredible player. Like the Mbappes of this world, and even they go through little kind of peaks and troughs. But Kulusevski, I was looking at his stats. No assists in the 9 Premier League since the World Cup. Just one goal in the 12 games in all competitions. I think this is because he was so fantastic in 2022. I think a lot of us, myself included, probably almost forgot the fact of how young he was. And the fact that, yes, you were going to have a period where he was going to, I don't think being found out's the way to say it, but defences are going to be more aware of him and what he does. And obviously we know he likes to cut in from the right-hand side. So teams will have studied that and then maybe be more ready for that. And this is the key thing for him now. It's about adapting and, at 22 years old, adding lots more to his game. And that will happen because he's a very, very clever player as well. And I think Sonny's a good example for him. I know it's not going particularly well for him at the moment, Sonny, but Sonny has added a lot more to his game than he was when he was the player that arrived from Germany. Oh, another goal for Liverpool. Absolutely tonking Man U. This is starting. They're properly getting some momentum, aren't they? Oh, great. But yeah, so Kulusevski this is not a good time for Spurs struggling with their front. I'm not going to say front six because there's one of them in particular who's not even getting a chance, so we're going to talk about them. Sorry, I'm starting to properly bung up now. There's Harry Kane as well. Harry Kane was involved in a lot of good stuff in coming deep. Wasn't particularly great with his chances in front of goal. He had a few, and they were a little bit kind of scuffed or deflected. And I mean, maybe credit for Wolves for getting bodies in the way, but it's really weird at Wolves. They properly treat Kane like a pantomime villain. Even when he gets off the coach, he's booed as he gets off the coach. And inside the ground, they're singing all kinds of chants about him. I remember that every time at Molineux. I don't know whether it's one of those things where just he's scored a lot of goals against them. I don't know. But, yeah, they're not too fond of the England captain. They're really not. Oh, I sound so snotty. I'm so sorry. But, yeah, of course, the moment that was probably the most bewildering one with Harry Kane. Maybe not bewildering because maybe we expected it. But Pedro Porro took that lovely free kick, smashed it against the crossbar. And it was probably one of the best set pieces Spurs have taken in a long time. I know Harry Kane did hit the bar. Was it against Man City? Maybe last season? But yeah, it was a really nice free kick from Porro. And I think we were all thinking, hello, finally, we've got someone that's going to take the free kicks. Obviously, Sonny's taken some crackers for South Korea as well. So he takes that. They get another one right in a very similar position, really dangerous outside the box. And everyone's thinking, okay, Porro again, he's going to get it even better this time. He's going to get it just below the bar. And Harry Kane steps up to take it. And I don't know whether it's a case of just he's a senior figure and he can strike a fantastic shot from outside the box. So he thinks, right, okay, it's my turn, I'm taking this. Or whether in training he is smashing every single free kick into the top corner. I don't know. But my goodness, they're not good. They're not good. Yeah. I think this one went into the wall. It was not great. It really wasn't. I mean, I just find it weird. He's one of the greatest goal scorers of the modern era, Harry Kane. But just free kicks are not his friend. You know, he's scored a couple of deflected ones. I remember the one against Aston Villa, of course, famously, which kind of kick-started the Poch era. I think he scored one this pre-season, did he? Was deflected? I seem to remember that as well. But in terms of just a straight-up free kick, it's not his forte. But he keeps showing resilience. He keeps plugging away, but it's almost like maybe just let other people have a go. You know, it's not for you. You've got incredible talents in every area, but maybe just not in this particular one. You watch. He'll probably take one now, and he'll score an absolute belter, and it will change our minds. But at the moment, it's not the greatest thing. Sorry for your rustling of paper. It's because it's so disgusting. I'm sorry, but like I say. It's no video or video with a man sniffling and snotting everywhere. And my wife's put the heating up full blast. You might occasionally hear the strains of Hamilton. I think they're watching that downstairs. She's whacked the heating up full blast with someone who had a bit of a temperature. It's not the greatest thing in the world, especially with snot bag. But Harry Kane, he spoke after the game. He said, I thought we controlled the game for large spells, but we just weren't clinical enough in the final third. Whether it's the final finish, the pass, or the cross, we just weren't clinical enough. And at this level, you get punished, and that's what happened towards the end of the game. And when it was put to him, that stat about Spurs having had 14 shots before Wolves had their first, He said, that's what I mean. You can't fault the effort of the lads. You can't fault the way we played. But at this level, if you want to be fighting at the top of the table, you need to be clinical in different moments. And that's not just the finish. It's the final pass. And when you're 3v2 and scenarios like that, I just feel like I feel like we just need to get better in those moments. Premier League games, when it's 0-0 for a large portion, you can always get caught. And that's what's happened. Yeah, I mean, they're lacking creativity right now, I feel. If it's not coming from Kane, you struggle to see where it's coming from. That is, of course, is a byproduct of not really having creative midfielders anymore. And them not being a part of this current setup. So, yeah, there's a lot of responsibility on Kane. But also you have the running of Sonny and people like that. And Kulusevski, but in terms of a playmaker type who plays those passes, it is pretty much Kane. Heung-min does it occasionally, but it's not really what he's known for. So, yeah, so I understand it when people say like the likes of James Maddison and people like that. It's like, yeah, they are missing a player like that. But I don't know. Does Conte want a player like that? But I don't know. But that front three is just not working at the moment, and then you've got this weird change in hierarchy, or certainly yesterday, of the other three attackers, which honestly, it left all of us just like, what? So 77th minute, finally Spurs make their first change, and I wouldn't say it was only the fans were perplexed. It was also the media. Honestly, everyone in the press box was a bit like, what? So, let's go back a little bit. So, Spurs in the summer spent 60 million on Richarlison, one of the most expensive transfers in the club's history. Bringing in a guy who, is well known for what he did at Everton, essentially kept them up last season with his goals. Then in January, signed Arnold Danjuma. He scored 16 goals last season for them, including 6 in the Champions League. They had an option to buy for 24 million euros, which is 21.2 million pounds. So, two players they clearly have belief in, or you'd think. Then they have Lucas Moura, who Spurs obviously in December decided not to take up the option before it expired of increasing his contract by another 12 months, which would clearly suggest that they are happy for him to leave the club this summer. And look at his stats as well. Look, I don't want to kind of be harsh on Lucas because, as I said before, the loveliest guy, the most intelligent guy, some big moments for Tottenham, some of the most enjoyable moments of reporting on Spurs have come after Lucas has done magical things on the pitch. However, the numbers say everything. He's not scored or provided a single assist this season across 14 appearances. Obviously, injury-ravaged campaign, you've got to say that as well. Last season, 2 goals in 34 Premier League games. The season before that, 3 in 30. And there is a pattern. There is. Like I say, he's had some of those big nights for Spurs. But the numbers, you drill into them, and it shows that in more than half a decade in the Premier League and 147 games, he's got just 19 goals and 16 assists in half a decade. It's one of those things in his career, I think, that he hasn't made. Look, he's had a good career and he's had some big moments and he'll be able to look at those with pride. But would I say that he's fully made the most of his ability in the final third? I don't think so. So with all of that in mind, and the fact that he's only played 4 minutes of football since October in the league, when that board went up at 77 minutes and it had the number 27, we were a little bit surprised. We were not expecting that. It kind of suggests, as we always say, that Conte and maybe his coaches, I don't know, presumably they share the same view, they would just always look at experience. They will. And as the most experienced man, 30-year-old, he was turned to. But I guess in doing so, you're slapping down God, what was that? They're 2 fees together if you were to buy them. About £81 million worth of money. You're like slapping them down the pecking order. They might argue that Richarlison, especially, had not really done much, especially against Sheffield United, to justify coming on first. You could argue, okay. But then you've also got to show faith, I guess, in your 60 million man that he'll come good. But that doesn't explain Danjuma. Obviously, 26-year-old. He's yet to start a match for Spurs since he arrived. He's had 11 minutes of Premier League football to his name. He came on in a defeat at Leicester for that. He's got 9 minutes in the Champions League. Again, another defeat. Came on against AC Milan. And he's had 27 minutes across 2 games in the FA Cup. So the longest amount of time he's had on the pitch came with those 19 minutes at Preston. And lo and behold, he scored. It was his debut goal, of course. I just worry that he's now taking on the Brian Hill role of, oh yeah, he's that chap that sits on the bench and keeps it nice and warm, and he asks people if they want a blanket, in case they get a bit chilly. And I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't understand the point of just bringing in someone to, be a bench warmer, I guess. Especially when you're struggling to find goals and assists. And this is guy can offer you something. I don't know. Stuff like that always concerns me because it always makes me wonder, was it someone that the manager wanted? Or I guess, how are they in training since? But I don't know. I feel like there's been a few too many of these in the Conte era now of players that come in but aren't particularly wanted. Again, I could be massively getting ahead of myself. Excuse me. And it could just be a transition period for him. And he might still be adapting. But I just found it so weird that Lucas came on first. And the other thing that's weird is he's got this option to buy. When's he going to get the chance to prove that he should be bought? Especially if Spurs are going to kind of go out of all the competitions. Obviously, we hope they don't on Wednesday night, but the chances are going to get less and less for him, and less competitions to play in. So how is he going to convince anyone that he really deserves to be bought for that 24 million euros? It doesn't make any real sense to me whatsoever. But yeah, Lucas came on. He had one kind of bouncing pass through to Kane that Kane shot and got deflected wide, but it didn't really impact the game at all. Didn't bring anything that Kulusevski wasn't. So yeah, it's a strange one. It's almost like, I'm not saying that because the club don't clearly want him beyond the summer, or that that's what it seems, you don't like bomb him out or anything like that. But it does seem odd that a player who appears to have no future at the club is above a £60 million player and a new signing in the pecking order, who both you'd think would have a future at the club. Although I do think it'll be difficult for Danjuma to have one now at that price, unless something changes. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. What a voice. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I mean, if I was going to say there was one bright spot, that was Pedro Porro for me. I do feel like we're seeing him adapt that a little bit more and more. And I felt you could see signs of that against Sheffield United, although he obviously was a little bit weak for the goal. But I did feel like a lot of his play, he was starting to understand where he was meant to be, what he was meant to kind of fill in and do when he wasn't going forward, and also how he could contribute. I still think, and again I felt this yesterday, they're still not using him enough. They're still overusing Perisic down the left. But with Porro, sent an early shot wide, hit the crossbar with that free kick, had that shot deflected up onto the roof of the net. Yeah, that early shot wide was an absolute shocker. He should have done better with that. He kind of found himself suddenly in the box quite clear and just like shanked it off to the left-hand side. It was not good. But but I felt his defending was quite good as well on the whole. And he will state that he came off the pitch and Wolves scored not long afterwards. He could say that. I don't think he would, but he could. He provided 2 key passes, had 4 shots on goal, while also making 2 clearances at the other end. He sent in 2 crosses, one of them reaching its target. And like I say about the overloading on the other side, Perisic had again 10 crosses and only 2 reached their target. With Perisic, you could argue, of course, and he might say that attacking movement of those others has not been good enough. And maybe he's putting it into good areas and they're not there. But I don't know. I felt personally watching it that there wasn't enough attacking ability there. My goodness, Liverpool are destroying Manchester United. This really doesn't bode well for Spurs. The thing is as well, I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but again, the fixtures are still there for Spurs to keep going. Just if they can find a spark of form, because Liverpool, I think, have got, after Bournemouth, they've got some really tough games, a little run, but then this was meant to be a tough game, and they're winning 4-0 65 minutes in. Yes. Porro, back to Porro. I do feel like he benefited from having Romero alongside him. I felt Romero was quite good again yesterday. Probably the best of the back 3. And I think Porro has had to have Japhet Tanganga there, obviously a young player. He's had Davinson Sanchez playing there, having a bit of a mare, just a touch of a mare against Middlesbrough, Sheffield United. Felt like Middlesbrough. So having Romero, I did feel made a difference. He looked far more confident in knowing what he could do. And even when Romero did his frequent kind of bursts forward, he turned up on the left at one point, Romero. Porro was quite good at tucking in. He was quite tactically disciplined. So, yeah, I think that partnership's one we're going to hopefully see a fair bit more of as well. I asked Stellini, one of my many questions that destroyed my voice, asked him about Porro, and he said, Pedro Porro played a good game like all the team. We know Pedro Porro is this type of player. We need to help him to adapt himself to a new league, but today he was important for us. The only thing is to be ready, nasty, and aggressive in the way you have to kill the game. Little pointer. Why do Conte and his coaches call the young players by their full names? I don't understand it. Pedro Porro, Jed Spence. Whereas when it's Harry Kane, it's like Harry and stuff like that. It's really funny. I don't understand why they do that. When you're old enough, I'm just going to use your first name. But until then, you can have both your names read out like a naughty schoolboy. I asked Stellini, I don't know why I keep following up questions, but I did. I asked him, so how do you make a team nasty and aggressive in front of goal? Very much he put the ball in the players' court. They have to find a solution during every game, but today was not the lucky day that you shoot on target the first and you score. We needed maybe more chances, but then when you have 5, you need to score 1. So yeah, it was such a weird game. It was, Nunez is just kicked out on the floor. That did not look good. Although he didn't quite get to the kick. Yeah, it's one of those games where I've seen Spurs play worse than they did yesterday and win the game. It's just funny the way football works. Very strange. But they just weren't good enough in front of goal. You had 21 shots. You've got to score 1. You've just got to. And now we have Antonio Conte returning. Obviously, Christian Stellini was saying that he'd be back working today. I haven't heard anything to suggest otherwise as of this point. Presumably, he would be working with those who didn't play. But, yeah, I haven't heard anything to suggest he didn't turn up. But then, I have a bit out of it today. It's an interesting time for him to come back, because you'd say, if he'd come back a week ago, Spurs had just won 2 derbies, people are almost a bit like, we don't want him back, stay in Italy. Whereas, I'm not saying it's better, because no one wants to be out of the FA Cup and have lost against Wolves, but I wonder whether it's slightly easier in a weird way for him to come back now, because he can come back a bit of like a, lads, I'm back, don't worry, because that's exactly how he talks. He can come back in and almost like play the saviour role and try to, I guess, change the dynamic of what's happening, because obviously players have responded really well to Stellini and Ryan Mason as well on the training pitches. Maybe kind of in the piece I wrote late last night, it's like almost like when your teacher's not there at class and the substitute teacher's quite good fun, and you're like, oh, I'm kind of listening to what you're saying, actually, I get it now, that's quite cool. But then if that continues for a little while, perhaps complacency sets in a little bit, and you do need the main teacher to come back. And they saw a bit of a different Stellini, actually, to be fair. From what I understand, he was properly furious after the Sheffield United game. So they saw a bit of an angrier Stellini, and actually admitted yesterday, in one of his interviews, I saw that he was angry after this game as well. So I think it's an interesting experience for him. His 100% record is now obviously being utterly destroyed by those two defeats in a week. I wouldn't say humbling for him, because I wouldn't say he was ever getting carried away with it and walking around Hotspur Way going, hey, I'm the man that gets the wins. But I do think Conte will now come in, and it's easier for him to kind of try and show why he gets the big bucks, I guess. I do think that Stellini's kind of anger after the Sheffield game did get a response. Like I said earlier, there was a lot of pressing and energy, especially in that first half. You know, we say about Spurs and first halves this season, I felt it was a bit reversed yesterday. I felt like the first half, they're actually quite good. The second half was the poor one, whereas it's normally the other way around with a lot of the games. And just, one real lax moment in defence, and it messed it all up because they were so poor up front in putting the ball in the net as well. But it's on Conte now. It's been more than a month since the Spurs players have been able to kind of work with a fully fit and refreshed Conte. And we shall see what that brings. Obviously, a massive match coming up next with AC Milan. It had to be an Italian side, didn't it? Some would say that's incredibly coincidental. Stellini said afterwards, Antonio will be a massive boost for us from tomorrow until the end of the season. It's important that Antonio is back. We want to have him back with a different result, but the team shows to Antonio that it's alive. They want to win, they want to control the game, they want to dominate the game, and this is important, I think. I do think that with him being up against an Italian side, it is very much... it's going to bring a bit of a circus with it, of course. We've seen I've seen firsthand in Milan, sat in that press conference room, what that's like. Obviously, he was still recovering that day. Clearly, you could see he was quite frail, but he just get questions about everything for the Italian media. They were all queuing up for selfies with him afterwards as well. It was, from what I understand, I think there's going to be a lot of Italian media swarming on the game tomorrow, Wednesday, and probably, you'd imagine, for the press conference as well. The most important thing now, though, is like in that press conference before the first Milan game, it was all about his love of Italian football, which obviously lent itself to questions again about his future. And, you wouldn't put it past someone to ask a cheeky question to try and talk about his future again. Now he's back. I don't have to deliberately destabilise or anything, but you can imagine it being this is a time when everything needs to be on the game and not Conte and the future and all that. It's going to be very difficult being Conte's return in his first press conference back. I presume we're getting him on Tuesday. I mean, if he's back today, I can't see why we're not going to get him and a certain player. I don't think we've found out who that player is yet for Tuesday. I think we've got the press conference and then we've got the training session, which we watch about 15-20 minutes of afterwards. But yeah, this is not a time for Conte to send any mixed messages about anything. Just focus on the game. He needs the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to be absolutely loud and everyone behind the team. He doesn't want any kind of more just stuff about him. Look, his future stuff is still to come. That's a subject that we're going to talk about, no doubt, for the rest of the season. But on his return, it just needs to be about him being back at Spurs. He should be refreshed. He should be refreshed and really kind of, another goal. 5-0. My goodness. This is some result. Yeah, he should be really refreshed. He should be ready for this game. He should be full of high spirits, not drained, tired in any way. You never know. We could see the best version of Conte, and that could have a galvanising effect on the Tottenham side as well. You maybe be contemplative while he was away, thinking of the ways that he needs to deal with certain players, maybe different things he wants to bring in. Who knows? Who knows? Hello. I don't know why I started to talk like an old English gent in his 60s. I'm going to look on the positive side, and then let's see. Hopefully, he brings a shift in dynamics, because again, it needs to be all about this match. I mean, we've even had, talking of sideshows, we've had all the stuff in Bahrain. You might have seen Daniel Levy out there at the latest Grand Prix, which obviously photoed with Jam Najafi, who is the vice chairman of McLaren, who obviously has been linked with buying Spurs. Is he MS Capital? I'm trying to keep up with all of the different takeover types that have been linked. Although I've seen a lot to do with them and Everton, investing in Everton being more of a thing in recent days as well. Look, having photos of him having a meeting, of course, is going to set tongues wagging. Spurs, as they would always do, very much maintaining that he's only there as part of this freshly signed 15-year Formula One deal partnership that Spurs have done, which will bring various things, including this karting track. Karting? It was like go-karting, I put them together. Karting track under the South Stand, which South Stand car park, I think. Honestly, it's the most multi-use stadium I've ever. There's not a single room, I don't think, in that stadium that isn't used for two different things. I think even our press conference room is used for screenings and everything as well. But yeah, so Spurs say it's about that. And to be honest, I've seen some of the footage, and he's wearing a Spurs crested top. So, it's not the most subtle undercover kind of trip to Bahrain if he's wearing his Spurs stuff. I think Todd Klein's out there as well, chief commercial officer as well. I saw his... weirdly, because I saw he was out there, I had a little look at his Twitter account, and I saw he was getting flack for... I think he was saying something about the Formula One partnership, and people underneath were saying, like, you're destroying this football club and all this. I don't get that. I get you could criticise the owners, criticise John Lewis, Daniel Levy, whatever. Todd Klein's job is to bring in commercial opportunities, and to be fair, there's a lot of that happening. Yes, the naming rights have not been secured yet, but there's actually a lot of these quite lucrative tie-up things that have been coming in. And look, this is where we get down to the age-old debate of the people who don't want the current ownership will say, the money isn't getting put back into the club, blah, blah, blah. The club will say, all the money gets put back into the club, blah, blah, blah. But in terms of Todd Klein very much having a job, you go out, you get this deal, bring in the money, that's what he's doing. And when you are taking on the big, huge sovereign-funded clubs and all this sort of stuff, that's, I guess, how you're going to have to bring in all the extra money to help combat them. So I kind of feel like it was really harsh. I kind of feel like, well, he is doing his job. He's, you could argue maybe others haven't absolutely done their job to the best, but this guy is chief commercial officer and he's bringing in commercial opportunities galore. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just thought he was doing good things. But again, look, I get it. It's not football. It's not what you want to see. As in, the people that get angry about these things. But in terms of man has job, man does job. I don't know. Maybe I see things in a different way. Maybe I'm a bit weird. I don't know. But yeah, all about Wednesday now. Wednesday night at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium should be packed out. Needs to be noisy. Um, very much needs to. I know it's difficult after 2 defeats, but obviously everyone's got to try and create that atmosphere that we've seen with Champions League. I think. Is there going to be a tifo? I think I heard that. Someone told me that yesterday. It might be George from the Press Association. Yeah, so there should be an atmosphere going. Conte's return as well. Hopefully, he and the fans can kind of rekindle their relationship a little bit. Get them believing again. Because obviously there's a fair bit of dissent out there towards, I guess, his reign and the owners. It's weird. It's like just been shots being fired everywhere. It's players aren't good enough, managers not good enough, and there's so many different things. And then the owners and the chairman and all this. It's like, wouldn't it be nice for everyone to be happy? I know it's not going to be the case, but it kind of gets a bit boring, doesn't it? In terms of like this, Liverpool are winning 5-0. I want to be kind of enjoying football again, and it just isn't happening right now. Someone actually, I was having an exchange of messages with a well-known Spurs fan last night, and they were asking my views on stuff, and I was saying it obviously as a journalist. They were like, "Oh, but what about as a fan?" And I was a bit like, "Well, I don't really have the luxury of being able to be a fan anymore. I have to be objective. I have to do my job." But obviously, I would always say that when things are going well, you're kind of the fan side of you is allowed to come out a little bit more. You can really enjoy it as well. Whereas when they're not going well, you've really got to delve into it as a bit of an autopsy and dissect things. And I guess that helps deal with, I'm not going to get angry like fans are going to get. Whereas, yeah, it's weird. Maybe I won't quite get the highs that the fans get emotionally, but I can enjoy it. But then I'm not going to get the depths of being really angry, because for me, my brain's immediately into, right, okay, so I need to work this out. How do I deal with this? What do I write about that? What comes next? All this sort of stuff. So, yeah, it was an interesting thing, trying to explain that, almost like my split personality that I have now. From the boy that was taken by his dad to White Hart Lane all the time, to now having to kind of see things in a bit of a different view, which is good in some ways, not so good in the other. I've always say this to people: it's not always the nicest thing when you see behind the curtain in football. There's a lot that you don't like, but also you get to see a lot of stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to. Oh my goodness, it's 6-0. This is incredible. This is what I mean, though, isn't it? Just for Wednesday night, to be able to watch Spurs and just to have some kind of absolute showcase performance. We've missed nights like that. Although Spurs went to Old Trafford, didn't they? 1-6-1 under Mourinho. That was a good day. But yeah, interesting to see how United come back from that. That's huge. Like I say, more worried about what it means for Liverpool as well. Harry Kane said about Wednesday. Wednesday is the most important game for us now. It's the next one, and it's an opportunity to stay in the Champions League. It's going to be tough playing against a really good side, but we're at home. We'll have our fans behind us, and that's really important. A tough week for sure, but in football, the next game is only ever just around the corner, so we need to make sure we're ready for that. As you saw, looked like they were preparing the back three that they're going to play on the night. Eric Dyer obviously is suspended, so he won't be able to play. So, it was a VAR check. Or maybe, I don't know. Doesn't matter. You'll know later whether it ended up 6-0 or not. Yeah. So what was it? Oh, the defence. So we had Christian Romero, Clement Longley, and we had Ben Davies. There's some people in the club that believe that Clement Longley could actually be the best option in the centre of that back three with his passing range. Yeah, I don't know. I see elements of it. I know he's good on the ball. He's got a good left foot. But then I do think, despite the flack he gets, Eric Dyer can also play some really nice kind of crossfield balls. And yeah, the way he uses the ball can be good. It does also mess things up, but with his passing, I mean. But yeah, I'm doing it again. Oh, I feel so rough. I think the goal must have stood because they're making lots of substitutions. But Longley, he didn't do himself particularly any favours yesterday. I didn't feel. He had one misplaced pass in the second half that led to them racing away. Matthias Cunha, he was really lucky that he fired wide in front of goal, and he also didn't really get back. It had stood. It was 6-0. You didn't need to know that. So that wasn't a particularly great moment. And then I actually felt with the goal itself as well, Longley had a big old part to play in that as well. If you watch it, he steps out to try and get to Jimenez, completely messes it up. Jimenez breezes past him, and that leaves a big pocket of space behind him for Traore, and it also has a knock-on effect for Ben Davies. Ben Davies kind of comes across thinking, do I have to now come and block the Jimenez shot, or do I cry across to Traore? And he ends up kind of doing neither. Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good moment, and like I say, Romero was the best of the three for me on the day. And it's all about, at least they've played together, they've got a little bit more understanding. I do think that will play a part on Wednesday night, but it's going to be a tough game. Milan found a little bit of form, although if Spurs are going to take anything from it, they did lose at Fiorentina 2-1 on Saturday. So Spurs obviously be hoping that they struggle again on the road on Wednesday night, but we'll see. We'll see. Spurs need to be better. They do. They need to rise to the occasion, as Liverpool have tonight. There's going to be a lot of Spurs fans worried about this result and what it means for Liverpool, and I understand why, because it's the kind of result that you harness, don't you, and you use as a momentum builder. So Spurs need to make sure that they try and keep them at touching distance, or away from touching distance. I don't know. I'm struggling to even think coherently right now. But yeah, so Conte returns. He comes back to a team that's had highs and lows while he's been away. They need to find stability. I think having him back for now provides that temporary stability before we find out exactly what's going to happen next season, but that's for another time. I think, like I say, he needs to get the Spurs fans believing again. I think there's little qualms growing about the football, whether it gets the best out of the players. It's the age-old stuff. I totally understand the viewpoint that how many managers can all do this, and the constant has been the owners, all of this. But I would also say that they should still be getting better out of what they've got as well. I've always said that at times this season. So, oh my goodness, it's 7-0. This is just madness. What a game to try and do a video to while watching. That's mad. Their goal difference is absolutely flown up as well. So that's going to be another big issue as well, just to chuck that on board. But yeah, what comes ahead for Conte really? I kind of feel like his tenure is really going to could be judged on it. To be honest, it could be judged on what comes next really. In these coming, what is it? Well, we have March, February, April, May, 3 months. If he is to go in the summer, then we kind of need to. It's going to define his reign, isn't it? I mean, it looks like we're going to be back to one game a week kind of thing, no midweeks, which will suit him. It will suit his style of management. So you'd think he should be able to squeeze everything he possibly can out of the squad in the coming months. And I guess if he were to leave in the summer, would he leave feeling that he'd succeeded if he got him into top 4? I don't... Look, to be honest, Spurs haven't been in the top 4 since Poch left, and to have got them in both your seasons, I think that's definitely one achievement to take away. But of course, he would have liked to have been the man that brought silverware to Tottenham. And I do think getting in the top four will, if he does go, it will benefit the next manager. You will have a better base to build on. You will be able to attract better players. There will be even more money to be able to work with. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about the future because, again, then I'm getting away from Wednesday's match and I'm looking too far forward. We've got plenty of time to look at that and what happens with Conte when he's back. If he is to go, who Spurs will look at. There's quite a few obvious candidates, but we shall see. Very quickly before I go, a very briefest of loan roundups. I know Troy Parrott started, Dane Scarlett started. I think Troy Parrott was a big moment when they felt someone should have been sent off for wiping him out as he was running through. Destiny Udogie started. I think Dane Scarlett started on the left, actually. It was good for him because it was his first start in a little while. Giovanni Lo Celso, talking of starting, getting back on a football pitch. Giovanni Lo Celso finally back in action. He came on the 89th minute for Villarreal. Got booked in added time as well. He was only on the pitch 4 minutes, I think it was, something like that. He got booked. But brilliant to see him back. Torn muscle. But he's finally back. He was injured before the World Cup, was he? So that's months he's been out. So lovely for him. Tonga Dembele came off again the bench. That's 11 Serie A matches in a row he's come off the bench. Honestly, he's going to end up with a title, though. The title winner's medal. Harry Winks is playing today for Sampdoria against Salernitana. Sorry, I can't talk anymore. Sergio Reguilon is out for a while with a hamstring injury. I think he was going to be out for about a month. He's been out for a couple of weeks with that already. Joe Rodon, Jed Spence likely to, or certainly Spence to play for Rennes against Marseille tonight after this goes out. Well, after I've recorded it anyway. Harvey White came off the bench for Derby. He's made 3 consecutive starts, but he came off the bench, so he's getting minutes. Brian Hill came off the bench for 12 minutes. Sevilla got smashed 6-1 by Atletico. So they're all getting minutes, apart from Reguilon, obviously, who's injured. Varying degrees of minutes, but they're getting minutes. Another conversation we have to have at some point is which of those 11 players, if there is a change of manager, who gets another chance, who comes through, and there's loads of interesting ones there. I was discussing that with George from the Press Association yesterday about how, some of those players, if a certain manager were to come back to the club, there's some of those players who he didn't really get much time to work with. Do they suddenly get a second chance? Who knows? But again, I'm doing that thing again. Don't worry. That's for another day. That's for if it comes into play that it looks like Antonio Conte isn't staying beyond the end of this season. Right, I've got to head off now. I'm going to go and give my nose a proper blow. I still can't believe this scoreline going on. It's about to finish. Literally going to finish this video at the final whistle, I think. So I'm going to go and upload this now, and hopefully it's not too awkward to listen to with the clearly affected voice and the snottiness and all of that. And look, hopefully Spurs give us all something to make us feel a bit better on Wednesday night. I'd love for Spurs to get through the quarterfinals of Champions League. Would be an achievement. Certainly after some of the performances this week in the competition this season as well, and just to give the fans something back, because they've done a lot of travelling in this last week, especially and across the season, but this last week as well, with no reward whatsoever. And there's a lot of angry people out there as well. So please, Tottenham, give us all something back on Wednesday night. Make it a bit worth our while, and the fans especially. And let's have some good stuff to talk about. Right, I'm going to head off now. Take a couple of days to try and recover and be back for the press conference on Tuesday. And as always, stay healthy. Ironic, I know. Look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.